Well, blessings, everybody. Today we're going to look at Hosea 5. So take a moment, read the entire chapter. It's not that long. I think it's 15 verses long. It begins with this declaration. Hear, give heed, listen. A lot like the fourth chapter began. But to whom is it being addressed? Well, you find out that this is being said to the priests, the royals, the people of Israel. The leaders, the priests in the king's house needed to heed the prophecy, because they were facing judgment, and the judgment was because they had been ensnaring the people. And it mentions Mizpah and Tabor; these were high places in Israel, places of sin. And God tells us that the revolters, the one that were revolting against Him, were deep in depravity, not just depravity, but deep into it. And God says, "I'm going to chastise all of them." And then He defines what they were doing. He said, "They're defiled by harlotry. They're totally polluted. They do not know the Lord." And they were unable to return to God because of the spirit of harlotry within them. In other words, the idea is this, that they kept practicing this and they would not give up their practices to seek God, and so they're unable to return. They were enslaved and overpowered by sin. In our homework in the workbook, we had several cross references in the New Testament, and we found out that we as believers are not so unless we choose to be so. We are freed from sin, but we must choose daily to walk in death to sin, okay, death to self. Well, we continue on, Hosea 5. The pride of Israel testified against him. Pride is an insidious thing. Israel, Ephraim, and Judah all stumbled in iniquity because of pride. And then some things were described. They go with flocks and herd to seek the Lord, but they cannot find him. And the reason is he's withdrawn from them. They had dealt treacherously against the Lord. They had borne illegitimate children, whether that be literally or figuratively, probably both with their temple prostitute practices and such. And he says, now the new moon will devour them with their land. I don't know what that means exactly. Probably this, that by the time of the new moon, something was going to happen to come and start devouring the land. So he says, blow a horn, a trumpet, an alarm in Gibeah, Ramah, and Beth Haven. Behind you, Benjamin. And these are all places right there where high parts where they would have blown the horn to warn. And the warning was what was occurring in Ephraim. Now, Ephraim was one of the tribes of Israel, and often it's used synonymously with Israel, but it was the largest tribe. It was the one that was remaining after the initial conquering of the Assyrians in 732, I think, BC. So he says, Ephraim will become a desolation in the day of rebuke. They will be oppressed. They will be crushed in judgment, because Ephraim had determined to follow man's command. That goes back to how they had chosen to go their own way and worship God in the way they wanted to. They'd gone the way of Cain. Judah will be like those who move a boundary. And he says, I'm going to pour my wrath upon Judah. He says, I'm like a moth to Ephraim. I'm like rottenness to Judah. And here's why. When Ephraim was sick, she sought Assyria to help. And he says, Assyria couldn't help you, couldn't heal you. So God says, I'm going to be like a lion to Ephraim and a young lion to Judah. I'm going to tear to pieces, and then I'm going to go away. And I'll go away and return to my place. This is the Lord speaking. Until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. He gave them hope right here. He said, I'm going to be like I'm totally gone from you. But in your affliction, in this affliction that's coming, you will earnestly seek me. And they will find out, and he's already proclaimed it to them, that he will be found. There is hope. Again, I'm Dale from the Precept classes in Cullman, Alabama. Thank you for being with me. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.